Red Dead 2 is the best video game ever made in just about every measurable way. I actually get pissed off when people say that it's one of the best video games of 2018, or even if people say it's the best of the decade. No, it's the best. Nothing comes close. You're really gonna name drop some game about witches? What the hell are you talking about? Not interested. Granted, I've only heard this from strangers. I'm not fixing to play any video game unless it's recommended to me by somebody I can respect. Although it is the best, it is vast in scope, scale, duration. In such a huge video game, there's bound to be occasional faults or matters that are fine themselves but could be improved upon. I'm going to address miscellaneous issues first, then get to Chapter 1 afterwards. Dialogue about places is sometimes inaccurate or unusual.
Some place called Scarlet Meadows.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, it's right out near New Hanover. Right, it's real quiet out there.
Where are we heading exactly?
Up near the Dakota River?
At Hosea's age, he may get confused on occasion, but the spry characters do it too. I would make the icon for final missions of each chapter red, and put a small clock icon next to optional missions when their availability is limited. New Austin is barely used. There should be a couple stranger missions out there. And I'll mention some more ideas for New Austin later in this video. Many letters flip to a blank backside, and that adds up over time to perhaps over a minute I'll never get back. Debt recovery missions should be mandatory.
Why?
The most interesting camp events are extremely rare and seem to only be found on YouTube. What if the game's missions were staggered between some of these good camp events and needed them to occur to unlock certain missions? Numbered mission names should be for stranger missions only. The visions of animals that represent your honor level should occasionally have places in the background, such as the Downs Farm and Shady Bell. Small detail, but suffragettes are only seen in Rhodes and Saint Denis. Maybe they could be in Blackwater too.
Now I know his type. He is a vindictive little power broker who rules by fear.
Rockstar has a hard-on for using the word vindictive excessively, and they've been doing it forever. I even remember it being used on the radio in San Andreas. It's used at least 3 times in Red Dead 2. Once you notice it, it's everywhere. Let's see if it's in GTA 6. Speaking of GTA, I think that instead of existing places, there should be references to Liberty City, Carcer City, North Yankton, etc. Not to say that this game should be full of distracting references all the time, but they could have gave us this at least. I know Red Dead 1 might have established the pattern, but it still wasn't too late to change it. The tense score and design of the opening title cards is great, but it's phrased very awkwardly. Here's a remade version. It's important that at the very beginning there aren't too many non-essential details. Dutch's first monologue should be shortened, sparing the key details of it. For instance, he tells Miss Grimshaw and Pearson to turn the place into a camp. It's better that their roles just become evident later on. As Sadie's house burns down, they ride off with dialogue from Sadie followed by an epic score song, but a better line from Arthur preceded that line, and the two should be swapped.
What's your name, miss? Miss?
Adler.
Adler.
Sadie Adler. Mrs. He was my husband.
Miss, it's okay. We're bad men. We ain't them.
The second mission shouldn't follow the first immediately. It should actually be saved to be unlocked after choosing either of the next two available missions. After the first mission, Sadie just disappears for 2 chapters. Maybe she should join Arthur and Charles when they go hunting.
We ain't
5,
opening this door.
4, 3, 2, 1. Seems our friends have gone deaf. Wake them up a little!
Cornwall is often described as wealthy. It would be funny if they used the term millionaire, given that it was at a time when that actually meant something. I actually conceived the idea for this video way back in 2018 when I was watching the ending for the first time. This game is well known to have different endings, but they're really not so different. It also gives the impression that the honor system changes the trajectory of the game, but it barely does. Arthur still performs the same selfless acts, and there's not much reason for main characters or the player to see him differently. If you have high honor, you unlock several additional missions and cutscenes, but with low honor, you don't unlock shit. You just miss out on those, and the end result is virtually the same. I also had the idea that Arthur's conduct should be reflected in Dutch's conduct to emphasize how, despite the growing contrast between them, they're connected and their struggles are shared. The nature of both Arthur and Dutch's downfall from your choices should have been as follows. High honor, tragic delusions. Low honor, obscene brutality. With John's commitment to not looking back being on the basis that high honor is too painfully tragic, or low honor weighs heavily on his conscience. To add low honor missions, helping Jamie in Chapter 2 or helping his father later on could be mutually exclusive, and if you refuse the first, you'll be given the second one, which fits with the idea of Arthur's circle sharing his characteristics, Jamie needing to evaluate his decisions and Mr. Linton being sour and crude. Chapter 2 is often mundane compared to what comes later, but that is valuable for building up the game and making the rest of it all the more important.
You're turning into a regular old fairy godmother there, Arthur.
Mary Beth, Karen, and Tilly could potentially be consolidated into one character. Maybe the Valentine mission with Uncle could be with Abigail, Tilly, and Sadie instead. Conversations between Uncle and Sadie would be interesting. Actually, Uncle is always an excellent entertainer. Fast forward a ways to Micah's old pals Cleet and Joe.
Why are these two still here?
That was no way to introduce them, out of nowhere, 3 missions away from the ending. When Arthur comes to Strawberry in search of Micah, Joe should be in the cell with him, and he joins them in the shootout. Milton and Ross never seemed like much of a duo. Even if they had to hire a different actor, there's no need for Ross to be a mute. He has 2 lines in the entire video game, which ruins some potential to complement the Red Dead 1 character. Milton is always more cordial than Ross, who perhaps could have added a bad cop dynamic.
Liquor never dulled a good man's senses.
When Arthur unties the German father, it should be optional to return him to his family. If you choose not to, Charles says he'll give him a ride and sends Arthur to the
Go
caravan.
find some other fool to run your errands.
Bill, come on over here. Will you be my other fool? You too, Charles.
What are you talking about?
Arthur.
At this moment, it seems that Bill is about to kill Uncle. Bill doesn't have a single good friend in the gang, and I don't see why not. He seems to be a decent enough feller, and maybe he should have been pals with Javier. Early in the game, only main characters seem to be really good friends, and people already antagonize each other all the time, which should be saved for Chapter 6. There should be more laughter in the camp and moments of friendship between side characters. The missions with Bo and Penelope are better suited to be optional honor missions. I hate to be the one to say it, but for this setting and time period, there's too seldom any usage of N-words. I'm not mentioning this just because their presence would be a matter of greater authenticity. No, it's because their absence is a matter of inauthenticity. Whether you like it or not, it breaks immersion. Karen making a performance at the Valentine Bank is a good detail, but not the matter of making a big deal about it. Instead of all the exposition beforehand, she should just ask right on the spot which option to select. I wonder what will happen with this guy who hates Cubans and used to believe the moon was made from ladies' tears. Oh, nothing. It just goes nowhere. Catherine Braithwaite talks about playing crib, and you should be able to go to their house and play it as a minigame. The Blessed Are the Peacemakers mission includes an O'Driscoll saying he will kill Arthur before shooting him, giving the impression that he's actually killing him. That line should be removed. After Colm talks to Arthur in the cellar, in a memorable twist to this mission, when he gets up the stairs, a lawman tackles him, and as Arthur escapes, there's loud clamoring and gunshots. Once he's out of the cellar, there's a huge shootout going on between the Pinkertons and O'Driscolls, with the Pinkertons winning. Then afterwards, I get that the matter of how Dutch returned to camp instead of searching for him highlights their lack of integrity, but that's unnecessary. I think the Reverend should mention that Micah or Dutch is still out looking, based on your honor level. There's almost nothing to be improved upon in the enthralling Blood Feuds Ancient and Modern mission, except Arthur should open the balcony door more seamlessly.
Come on. Get your damn hands off of me, boy.
One possible line for Agent Ross. I don't have a whole lot to say about Chapter 4, as it is very well executed as is. Bronte can be reached pretty quickly. Maybe Arthur should have to scout in one other place first, before being told to go to the Bastille Saloon, just to drag it out a little longer.
Manners to keep my mouth shut.
There he is! Shoot that man!
Who is this guy on the riverboat? Shouldn't he be one of the guards in uniform? Arthur getting unreasonably pissed at Micah after Sean is killed works because of all the grief, but then he vows to not speak to him for a while, which might be too far. We could stand to get to know him a little better. There is an optional mission in which Micah reveals that he banged Lenny's girlfriend, and as valuable exposition, that mission should be mandatory. As I mentioned before, only if you turn down the first mission from Mary, you get the second one. And if you did do the first, she just invites him to the theater and you get that sequence only. In the mission with her father, you should be given the option of shooting the man who bought the brooch right away. After doing so, Mary is visibly disgusted with Arthur, and she won't take it back, and leaves, upset. At the bank, after Milton and Dutch go back and forth, Ross takes the gun out of Milton's hand, and he delivers the line,
I've given you enough chances.
and he shoots Hosea.
Arthur's here!
I used to think Chapter 5 was too crazy of a turn of events, but I went on to like it. The Haitians and the people of Guarma speak English way too fluently. There should be a realistic language barrier between Hercule and the gang, with him speaking mostly French and occasionally stringing together a sentence in English. Bill could say, "Too bad Trelawney ain't here," to translate. In the standoff sequence, Dutch should tell Fusar to say hello to Signor Bronte in hell.
Loyalty, Arthur. It ain't. I had a goddamn plan! on!
When looking at John through the binoculars, he seems to be holding a pickaxe, but there's nothing to strike with it. They're harvesting tobacco or some kind of crops. There's no reason for Arturo to get killed. That mission also doesn't show the best potential views from a hot air balloon. You should be able to take it at different parts of the map by finding Arturo in the Heartlands, or he could be a familiar face near Tumbleweed. In the mission titled A Rage Unleashed, Arthur complains more than he should, and sometimes he could be saying more with silence than with words, type thing. Also, Dutch crashing the boat is just too much. How about instead of him accelerating after subduing the captain, maybe two of them just can't figure out how to stop the boat in a way that looks more reasonable? If Arthur refuses to visit Rains Fall, he should be given a new low honor mission with eagle flies. In the Archaeology for Beginners mission, Arthur mentions he once had a son who was murdered, and he should have mentioned the name of the killer. Rainsfall also said that elders were beaten and women were taken recently by the army. In this mission's new low honor counterpart, Arthur joins Eagle Flies in kidnapping the soldiers who took their women and gives them to the Skinner brothers, whom Eagle Flies has some connection with through a friend of a friend. On the way there, Arthur tells Eagle Flies that he once let a man bleed out in a horrific way, mentioning his name as the same name of the man who killed his son. But he withholds that detail and just says he deserved it. Then, when they hand the kidnapped soldiers over to the Skinner brothers, as they're leaving their camp, a blood-curdling scream follows them out. Low honor Arthur also just collects the debts whenever possible. Bill pretending to be drunk in Van Horn, like Karen in Chapter 3, is another instance of the game making a big deal out of small things. Instead of Bill saying it will be quite the show, then just lying down on the floor, he should step into the saloon for a shot and a beer, stagger out, and holler belligerently at the stagecoach.
Hey, what's up, homie? You alright?
No, wait from me! Purple Chapel agents!
Cleet and Joe should show up at Beaver Hollow sooner, alongside Mrs. Down's son, for players with low honor only. Arthur asks him, "What the hell are you doing here, boy?" "These are old pals of Micah's. We ran into him in town." "Micah? He says your crowd is gonna need extra guns for what's coming. Even Micah should know you ain't cut out for this. Why don't you go back to your mother?" "Don't talk about my goddamn mother." I considered moving Goodbye Dear Friend to way earlier in the game, as early as Chapter 2 even, but this line from Dutch is truly priceless given that the price on his head is higher than ever.
Go brush that horse, officer.
Yes, sir.
At the end of My Last Boy, Arthur falls off his horse and passes out. The Germans should only help Arthur if he chose to help them earlier. If not, he just wakes up right there, covered in mud. In my opinion, the last two missions should be consolidated into a single mission, titled Our Best Selves. John should have reason to resent Javier somewhat, to be true to the dialogue in Red Dead 1. When he gets shot off the train, Dutch announces me, Joe, and Javier are going back for him, just since that is what they do, but it's easy to go unnoticed. High Honor Dutch says he needs a day or so to think about going after Abigail, but Arthur insists it has to be done now, and he peels off from the gang instead of them leaving him behind there. Milton reveals that Micah became an informant very recently, but it would make more sense that he's been doing it since Blackwater. When John returns to camp, instead of saying, "You left me," he says, "You left me again." The standoff sequence should be semi-playable like others, in which you can look at each character. Bill and Javier could have their guns drawn in both directions, at Arthur and Dutch, given that they aren't seen with each other ever again, and just to make the scene more dynamic, because the part with Miss Grimshaw already adds to that. The only option other than waiting will be to shoot at Micah, but once you retreat as the Pinkertons arrive, he says, "You only grazed me, Morgan." Perhaps there should be no discussion about the key for the money in the High Honor ending, and vice versa for the other one. This ending is really quite something as is, But the last exchange between Dutch and Micah after Arthur stops talking could have been like this. Is it true, Micah? You saw your gang turning on you, buddy. That wasn't getting any better. I did what had to be done. Is it true? Come on. Let's go. And Dutch walks away. The ending, if your honor level is neutral, should be the same as high honor, but the only ending in which Micah shoots Arthur.
You're not better than me, Morgan. Whatever you say, you fool. Damn you. Damn us both!
The low honor mission should be titled Our Worst Selves. The song on Arthur's ride back to camp hardly fits with the low honor ending. Let me know in the comments what song might work better than this. Arthur finds John limping on the road when he's almost back at camp and tells him to get on. John informs Arthur, Javier goddamn shot at me. Do you believe that? What? You shouldn't be back here. Jack and Abigail already left. Let's see if we can sneak past them. Alright, but get ready to shoot. Dutch accosts them saying, There you are, Arthur. Your boy shot at Marston. Did you tell him to do that? Is that true, Javier? And Micah, he's been talking to Milton. The following conversation continues as normal, but somebody else will have to announce that the Pinkertons are coming. Archibald is also in the standoff with the meanest facial expression there, and the game will tell you to shoot him dead as the Pinkertons show up. Once you escape with John, Arthur asks, You know the way to Copperhead Landing? I think so. Why do you shoot that kid? He had a nasty look in his eyes. But I know, John, that was a situation I created. Be better than me, brother. Well, thanks for your help, brother. Get out of here. I'm going to get you your money and put a bullet in old Dutch. At the end of this ending at the camp, Arthur also crawls for the gun or perhaps knife, and this time Ross steps on Arthur's hand. Micah does a relieved laugh. Ross picks up the gun. Mission accomplished. Right, pal? And as him and Micah wander off in a subtle callback to Chapter 1, getting there, we ain't done yet.
Farmhand!
In the epilogue, it's not clear how many months John works at Pronghorn Ranch for, but it should be alluded to that he spent a couple years there. Maybe not with title cards, but in the dialogue in the Motherhood mission. They also could have sent John to New Austin on a delivery run, where the Del Lobos attempt to rob him. House building seems to be mostly passable in terms of accuracy, although I haven't performed much framing myself except once several years ago. There's a few moments where they seem to be driving nails into a single joist, with nothing behind it. John's actor is or was a construction worker. Too bad he didn't point that out. I could be mistaken about that though, maybe it's anchored to something underneath. The one and only flaw with the game's otherwise perfect sound design is the overuse of the Sadie Adler theme song in the epilogue. Good as it may be, it seemed like I was hearing it every 5 minutes. The Ramon Cortez bounty mission isn't that bad, but it's kind of a pain in the neck, and should be optional. Perhaps the really big bastard mission too. And those ones being optional would give the epilogue a better sense of openness and being less linear. On the ride to Strawberry, Sadie should inform them that Micah had a falling out with Ross and tried to shoot him. Then he spent 5 years in Sisika Penitentiary. Sadie and Charles both talk about leaving, which was something of a lazy cop-out to explaining their absence in Red Dead 1. Unfortunately, one of them needs to die. Perhaps Charles, shot dead right away by the sniper. Sadie talks about taking up with a handsome revolutionary from South America. Instead, maybe she should mention that such a person actually exists. They met in Blackwater and might leave in the coming weeks. John asks Micah, "How's Jameson?" "Haha, I killed that bastard, and I'll kill you too." Maybe Low Honor Dutch doesn't shoot Micah, he just puts down his gun and walks away, leaving John to shoot him. And Micah responds, "What the hell, Dutch?" In my opinion, after John and Sadie leave with the money, we see a close-up on Micah's corpse before the credits begin. I just find that last scene unnecessary. It could just be shown shortly after, muted and in black and white.
And I think that's everything!
That's about every way that I suppose Red Dead 2 could be better.
That okay with you, John? Arthur? Or do you insist on something different?
Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching this.